Hello and hi. I know as a society we can all agree that we're tired of ads being everywhere. Advertising has been getting bigger and bigger since the beginning of the 20th century. But you see, kids, back in my day, we actually enjoyed the advertising that was pushed at us because it was fun. In fact, we initially looked forward to being advertised to because it was fun and interactive.
Back in the early 2000s, it was very popular for a lot of brands to use this new World Wide Web to advertise to both adults and kids. And within the first couple of years of the decade, these websites were everywhere. For the adults, the websites tried to focus on ways for them to shop directly with information about the products presented. But for the kids, well, it was our own little interactive world filled with fun polls, characters, and games. So many games.
Any product you could think of had its place on the website, so there's so many options to talk about. You know? Is anyone feeling hungry?
Postopia.com was a website created to promote and advertise the Post cereal brand back in 2001. It stayed active until 2011 when it was replaced by PebblesPlay.com, which makes sense with the amount of Flintstone games that were featured throughout the original site. There's no clear indication when that website shut down, but from what I found through the Wayback Machine, it looked like it changed again around 2017 to 2020 when the death of Flash happened. Although the website had a few design changes throughout the decade it existed, the layout was first broken between four worlds: Futuria, Iceburbs, Wet World, and Space Nation. In each of the worlds, you could also find some of the games presented throughout the different worlds before the website got an upgrade a few years later.
Of course, not all the games have been preserved, and it's a known fact thanks to a few portfolio websites I found while doing research.
Both Jim Fitz and Ryan Bond have highlights about the website and what parts they worked on, which I felt was one of the coolest things to stumble upon. It's very rare to know who's behind any of the websites we go on. Same category as normal game designers or graphic artists. So many pieces of media are created as part of a team, and there's never a spotlight on the artist who make it. Most go uncredited in the public eye, so I love seeing this. Jim Fitz wrote, "I managed a team of designers to create a website called Postopia for Post cereals. It was a website where kids could play games featuring cereals. It was heavily promoted on television and featured on the back of 17 million cereal boxes. I was the VP, creative director on the project. My responsibility was to oversee the creation and production of the website. The team consisted of 55 people in 5 different cities. Also, the artist in me is just impressed by his artwork, so completely unrelated, but while I have the chance to bring attention to it, I would totally have some of these prints framed in my home." Ryan Bond's website definitely gave me a lot more information on the project. He wrote, "Craft/Post Cereals launched an online kids entertainment/edutainment platform from 1999 to 2009. I was the executive game producer, kid advocate, and program manager on the project for 10 years. My responsibility was to oversee the creation and production of the website, the promotions, and specifically the games." After a few pictures showcasing some of the title screens from the website, there's a list of games that he and the team that he worked on with were.
Currently, most of the games from this list are available through Flashpoint. Thank you, internet team, for making Flashpoint. I'm grateful for you every single day. But there are a few that are still lost. Of course, there were more to these websites than the games alone. However, the majority of the return visitors were there for the games, myself included. Let's pour one out for all the Flash games that were lost, but then found again, as we break down what you could find on the website.
Starting out with the Postopia brand games, each of the characters had a few games of their own. Xander's world is Futuria, and his few games available are Robotopia, which is your classic build-your-own robot activity. It was a common theme at the turn of the millennium, and a vibe we'll see throughout the rest of the games available. The other one is Xander's Vert Jam Skateboarding,
because we were still writing the tales of the extreme movement from the 90s.
It's a simple skateboarding game where you click on the different tricks that you want Xander to do with a 60-second time limit. Also, this is the type of advertising that is everywhere within these games. It's this blunt throughout all the games, however, I don't mind it because it's all internal advertising. The post-cereal brands all have their own games, so there's this weird kid-friendly advertising synergy that was happening. From the list that Ryan Bond shared on his website, there are still quite a few missing Xander-specific games. Xander's Wild Time Rescue, Xander's Robo Pets, and Xander's Wild Time Rescue Land of Dinosaurs. Kiki lived in the ice burbs where it was winter all the time. Her games included polar ice caps where you have to glide the penguin, so they change all the ice cubes from clear to a different color depending on the level without falling off into the water. There's also little cereal pop-ups for extra points, and as the levels get more challenging, walruses to avoid and cracked ice to be aware of. Dream Room Designer, which I remember spending so much time on. There's 4 main themes to pick the furniture from: Groovy, Princess, Space Age, and Wild West. There's a good amount of options to pick from to waste a good amount of time with, and in the end, you get to show off your cool new virtual space.
With the limited options, how did I do?
Obviously, I would pick much different pieces that would be more whimsigoth vibes, but that's why I like more current design games like Animal Crossing or The Sims. But for the time being, this one held my attention back in the day. The other game still available is Polar Challenge. There's 5 levels where you race through the snow on different winter vehicles. Level 1 is an ATV, level 2 is skis, level 3 is a snow tube, level 4 is a sled, and level 5 is snowboarding. You can collect points while going through the flags, and between all the levels, there's an extra option for bonus points in which you can answer trivia questions related to winter.
I only knew this answer because of Stephanie Meyer. There's no more education in these games anymore. I mean, I genuinely do not know because I don't pay attention to current kids' media.
There were a few missing Kiki games again, thanks to the list, which included Make It Skate at summer and fall fashions, which I remember playing these games all the time.
Yes, I was always that girly girl who played all the fashion activity games on all the websites. We've talked about this before.
Diving underwater into Wet World is where you found Nick. The only game of his that's available is Auto Hockey, in which you play 8 levels against an octopus in air hockey. I was obsessed with this game back in the day, and I was so happy to find it again. Each level has a time limit of 1.5 minutes to get as many goals as possible to receive a key to help unlock the gate to the castle. Between all the levels, you also learn a fact about octopuses. Remember, kids, you're going to learn while playing air hockey. You can also DJ at the Starfish Lounge, where you got to pick out your DJ name. I went with Dolphin.
It sounds like that was the most fishy.
From then, you get to make music with various sound effects in different genres.
Serving fish.
You know you're ready to party with the final mix that I laid down.
Yeah, that's right, Polly D. DJ Dolphin is ready to take over.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
From the list, it shows missing games as Nick's Ocean Quest and potentially Clamshell Shoot, since that's also ocean-themed. Chelsea's domain was Space Nation with all the futuristic games. Space Nation Pilots, where your goal is to avoid and shoot the asteroids as you travel through space. Mission Mashup, where you have to connect the 2 identical pictures together, but in a way where there's an open line that connects them to clear them out before the time runs out. Asteroid Avalanche, where you have to collect all the cereal pieces to keep the power going. And Food Fling, which aesthetic-wise looks amazing. I love that old retro's 1950s futuristic vibe that was very popular during this time period. The gameplay is a little weird, but that intro where they recreate their old drive-in theater ads makes me so happy. Early CGI aliens are throwing food at the screen, and it's your job to throw them back before they have a chance to throw it at you. The first few levels, you have the option to throw soda, popcorn, or a hot dog, and once you get further in the levels, you can throw candy, nachos, or honeycomb cereal.
Because for some reason, honeycomb is a futuristic cereal.
It was hard to tell from the list if there was any more games missing specifically from Chelsea's domain, but it also looked like hers were the best archived out of the 4 characters. There was also a few general Postopia branded games featuring an overview of all the cereals advertised. Although, of course, as we've seen so far, the subtle advertising has been all over the games and will continue on further. In Postopia Adventure, you search through the various different worlds for crystals to prevent Postopia from falling into complete darkness. Wow. These games are hardcore. I know it's so dated, but this early CGI animation is just so cozy to me, although I wasn't the biggest fan of this gameplay specifically. It's so repetitive and it takes forever to find where the crystals are, but back when kids were playing these games, it definitely held their attention for a long time. Be a Pop Star wasn't specifically Postopia branded, but held the same animation as the previous game/activities. This is also one of my favorites to play, and when I found this again, I was so happy to have unlocked that memory. You get to pick from 4 genres: rock, pop, country, or hip-hop, either as a girl or a guy.
Is it just me, or does that guy look like Small Hands without all the tattoos?
You have a 30-day timeline to become a successful pop star, where each day you get to pick from the 8 options that can help your career. Obstacles happen from time to time where things don't go well and you lose points, but there's always areas where if you're smart, you can get extra points again. I remember never doing well on the game when I used to play it as a kid, and I didn't do well on it 20 years later. I think it's rigged, but still enjoyable while I was playing. In Shop Don't Drop, you play as a girl, obviously, with a couple of choices to personalize her look. If this wasn't an accurate archive of Y2K fashion, I don't know what is.
Also, what is up with this illustration? She looks either high or dead.
Anyways, the game is simple. You pass by the various stores collecting items stacked on top of each other and have to keep them balanced. Hence the name Shop Don't Drop Anything. My favorite thing with this game is all the store names in the background. Of course, while you're playing, you can't pay attention to what they say, so it's fun to be able to watch back and read them all. I love going to read books, sports stuff, yummy, splish, swimwear, splash, posters and more, cute and trendy, and toy box.
Good on them for expanding for just music.
She's my best friend, best of all best friends. Do you have a best friend?
Postopia Cereal Factory is your standard pinball game, a la Space Cadet vibes. There was this virtual JoJo game that I couldn't figure out how to work at all, but I still wanted to mention since it's technically found, just not playable. One of the strangest games they had was called Monkey Huts. It's similar to how you play Battleship, in which you have to figure out where the huts are on the map to be able to attack them against a computer. I hated this game so much. The music irritated me. I was just so annoyed playing, but I'll give it credit for the fact that you used to be able to play against another person online, or against your friend in a private room. Hysterical History was this minigame activity where you got to pick 3 historical figures to hang out together at a party. Again, the educational elements are front and center, telling you a little information about who they all were before you put your final guest list together. Location-wise, you got to pick from a barbecue, a dance, or a pajama party. So, of course, I put together Betsy Ross, George Washington, and Ben Franklin so they could enjoy watching Hamilton while eating pizza.
I just realized I never got to enjoy pizza or Post cereal while they were alive. That's a sad life.
And yes, I purposely put William Shakespeare at the dance so I could mention Christian Borle.
I am not sorry, I'm a theater kid. Also, if Shakespeare, Da Vinci, and Robin Hood all lived together within the same century as each other, I feel like they would all be within a relationship with each other. That would make a great show, honestly. Who wants to greenlight that?
Finally, I put Cleopatra, Queen Elizabeth, and Annie Oakley together at a barbecue because you know Annie would make the best food. Plus, girl power.
I'm sure that there's historical fan fiction written about all of these people. Book Talk, if you're watching, let me know.
There's also mini golf that, although again the vibe looked cool with all the different holes having that fun cereal theme, the game mechanics sucked, and I hated playing this again. Speaking of sports, of course there were a ton of sports games to play as well. And as a just mentioned theater kid, I never got into sports, so this will be a speedrun highlight going through the section. There was a stadium soccer showdown where you tried to kick a goal. There might have been more, but I did not play this long at all. I didn't play any of these long at all, honestly. There were a ton of baseball games like Pop Fly Challenge, where you had to move to catch the flying ball. Sailing Home, where you had to see how many bases you could run before being out. Ultimate Baseball, in which you could see all the trading cards of real baseball players, and then play a game of baseball fully virtually. Wacky Baseball, in which you played baseball in the future. Honestly, this might have belonged in Xander's section. And Bobblehead Creation Zone, which is the only sports game I played the longest because it was a design activity. It's camp. There was also an ice hockey game called Power Play and a NASCAR game called Speedway Challenge, where you got to play as one of the famous NASCAR drivers back in the day to try and win the race. I did not finish. I damaged my car too much. I was never good at racing games, though. Of course, all the specific cereals had their own branded games, too, some more than others. Honeycomb, for example, had a ton to play. In Honeycomb Slurp and Slide, you have to collect all the honeycomb cereal falling from the sky. The levels do get a little more challenging as they progress further, like being in the dark trying to collect them, for example. In Craver's Snowboard Jam, you have to snowboard down a mountain, avoiding obstacles to get to the finish line. Craver's Frozen Bowling is a normal game of bowling, where the honeycomb winner overlay. And in Craver's Stunt Bike game, you have to follow the jumps to do certain stunts at specific times. I couldn't figure this one out at all. Honeycomb Factory Frenzy, it's a platform game that's a copy of Super Mario with the most dated graphics ever. And Honeycomb Havoc is a Street Fighter clone with monsters that look like they came out of a Ray Harryhausen film.
If you don't know who that is, kids, look him up. My late uncle gave me this book about him one Christmas long ago. He told me that if I didn't know who he was, I should, and I'll appreciate it later.
Crunch Time is a Pac-Man clone. You get the idea. A lot of these Flash games are just replicas of other games with just different skins to match the characters. In Strawberry Blasted Sky Glide, it's a platform game where you have to glide around as Craver collecting all the strawberries for points, and the game Fast Eye is a little mini game where you have to pay attention to where the honeycomb is after being moved around between the 3 beehives. There was also a video attached to this game that doesn't work anymore, but I'm assuming it might have been a commercial for the cereal. In terms of the missing honeycomb games, there's Honeycomb Monster Truck, Honeycomb Taste and Tell, and Honeycomb Flying Disc Toss from Bond's list. That's a lot of honeycomb. Both Waffle Crisp and Golden Crisp had a lot less games to play. Waffle Crisp mainly had this Waffle Boy mascot attached with games like Waffle Boy's Jungle Adventure and Waffle Boy's Mountain Adventure. Both similar platform-style games, with the main differences being the location of the games, as well as you get to use an ATV in the Mountain Adventure game. They also had this very detailed comic-style intros, which I do respect to set up some lore before the game starts. There was another random mascot-type character, Bronk, who also had his own Sky Glide game, literally a copy of the Honeycomb game, and his Jungle Adventure game, which is literally a copy of Waffle Boy's game. Golden Crisp had Sugar Bear as a mascot and had Sugar Bear's Beach Break, which is a Brick Breaker clone, and Sugar Bear's Wacky Water Skiing game where you collect boxes of Golden Crisp cereal while water skiing. Oreo O's also had a few games of their own. Flying Disc Toss that had that limited Y2K futuristic graphics to it possibly belonged in Chelsea's section of games. You had to aim the disc at the targets, but again, I couldn't figure out how to get it to work. The game mechanics on this also sucked. There was also Extreme Cream Control. Oh my. That was your standard pipe building game where you need to keep the liquid flowing in the pipes as you get pieces to build on. I never could figure these games out either and always have been horrible at them. Finally, there's Oreo's Cream Team Journey where you have to place the umbrellas strategically in front of the dancing marshmallow puffs so they don't fall over the ledge and make it to their correct destination. Compared to other games where the music choice was awful, this music is such a banger. And gives me heavy flubber vibes.
I've never even had Oreos before. Where? That's good. This is good.
Going back to the beginning of the video where I mentioned that Postopia got turned into PebblesPlay.com before shutting down completely. Yeah, from that context alone, you can imagine there was tons of Flintstone branded games. In fact, compared to all the Postopia branded games, Flintstones were right behind with their options of what to play. So let's pour a bowl because there's a lot to cover. In Bedrock, Bobsled, and Blowout, the goal is to collect the spoons of Fruity Pebbles as you're racing down competing again against a time limit to make it to the finish line. In Bedrock Snowball Bash, you play as Fred, and the objective is to throw snowballs at the rest of the characters, popping up like a whack-a-mole clone. Bronto's on the Loose is a design painting activity. Voila, my final product. This should be shown at the MoMA. You also have the option to print it out or send it as an e-card. Bedrock and Roll was not an enjoyable game in my opinion. You had to collect all the stars on screen and not miss any, but also avoid all the bad notes appearing as well. Big Barney Chase was this board game styled minigame where you compete with the computer chasing Barney all over the world. Depending on what you roll on, there's trivia questions to answer for points. Many photo snap games where you have to try and take as many pictures of Barney within a certain time limit throughout the different countries. Another bowling minigame in Russia. A Simon memory game with songbirds in Africa. And in the end, you end up in Mexico to finish the game. Fruity Pebbles Sky Caper is a Frogger clone where you act as Barney trying to sneak into Fred's house to get the cereal. In between the levels, you have a mini challenge to crack the code as well. In Pebbles RoboPup Run, you play as Fred, chasing after the robotic dog, which, having robots in the modern Stone Age is so strange when you think about it, to try and get the Fruity Pebbles back from it. Pebbles Pop Star was also a weird game. It was more like an interactive AMV where you just popped all the stars that appeared on screen. Pebbles Dome Reef Ball also looks like it was featured in Nick's Wet World area. It's another soccer game, but themed to Fruity Pebbles. Otherwise, there's no correlation to the Flintstones with this game. Pebbles Quarry Adventure is another action platform style game where your objective is to go between the different floors collecting gems and avoiding obstacles. And Yabba Dabba Dig is a time game where the objective is to collect as many gems as possible while collecting boxes of Fruity Pebbles to keep your fuel intake up until you reach the finish line. And those are just the Fruity Pebble specific games. Cocoa Pebbles also has some branded games. Super Cocoa Man was another superhero-themed action platform where Super Cocoa Man would swing from the vines across buildings to collect boxes of Cocoa Puffs. Boulder Dash, in which you could play as either Fred or Wilma, you had to move around on the top of a boulder that was extremely hard to control. This game was honestly a bit stressful. I will say, though, that the ska music they had playing in the background was such a good banger, though. It makes me feel like I'm at Warped Tour again. Lair of the Cocoa Dragon was this game with different objectives throughout the different levels. It was an adventure-based game where the first level focused on maneuvering down a river while avoiding obstacles and collecting gems to reach the finish line. The second level focused on this weird boulder puzzle that I couldn't figure out, and that's when I gave up trying to play. They're all similar, you get the gist. There were also a few extra specialty cereals that are now discontinued, but had a few games while they were still available. Marshmallow Mania Pebbles, The Great Gazoo Space Chase, is another action platformer where you zap the incoming boulders before running into them. Dino S'mores Pebbles had a few camp-themed games. Camper's Canoe is a paddling game where you paddle around collecting different items. And Capture the Flag is a racing platform where you run towards the finish line with the intention of capturing the flag. Pretty self-explanatory. Berry Pebbles, which is still available to purchase, had this bumper pool game that I loved playing back in the day. It's virtual bumper pool. If you know the rules of bumper pool, that's the game here. Finally, there was this Pebbles Vidrock game that didn't have any Flintstones branding attached. This was also one of the games that was located in Kiki's area due to the Chill Channel label. It's also another activity that I loved playing a lot.
You got to create your own music video. Are we surprised that I play that a lot? Especially since film is what I'm still obsessed with today. Is this meta?
You could pick from 6 songs: Rock the Ice, Choco Groove, Pebbles Pop, which is very Latin sounding, not pop in my opinion, Arctic Jam, Polar Groove, and Hip Hop and Pebbles. I picked Rock the Ice, of course.
Now please enjoy the world premiere of my Pebbles Vidrock music video.
Even though there were so many Pebbles games, there were still quite a few missing thanks to Bond's list again. Mount Pebbles Snowboard Dash, Pebbles Dare Dash, Bedrock Superstar, Pebbles Big Rock Show, Adventure Beneath Bedrock, Fruity Pebbles Beach Break, Pebbles Passport to the World, and Pebbles Great Cocoa Chase. There were a couple of partner games that tied into different movies as well. The two that are available were this Polar Express Train Adventure, which is a train version of those pipe building games, where you have to navigate the trains around so they don't crash, and E.T. The Way Home, another action platform game where you have to collect the different items and cereals and avoid the agents looking to capture E.T. There were also a couple of games featuring these Morph-It characters. I have no idea what they are or where they came from, and I could not find any information about them when I tried to research. Morph-It's Farm is another pipe building game like the previous Oreo ones, and Morph-It's Quest, you have to give them the right items that they ask for while they grow up. I have no idea, these were really strange. There was also this random standalone Kool-Aid Jammers Apple Harvest game, which is another collect the items they drop down from the sky game.
By this point, I hope you're full because those are all the current games available through Flashpoint. I say it every time, but I'm so grateful it exists. There's so many games saved because of it, although this is still not a complete list of the games from Postopia, but it's pretty close. So now I turn it over to you. Did you visit this site back in the day? What were some of your favorite games that you used to play? I still hope more information and restoration will pop up in the future, but I have to be grateful for everything we have so far. Until then, this visit to this world has come to a close, and now it's time to return to reality and this decade. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.